Hello again. So today I'm going to talk about another verse of the Dhammapada, and this is from the section called Pleasure, and it's verse 213. Clinging to the loved causes fear and brings sorrow, but those who have overcome this clinging are free. Clinging to the loved causes fear and brings sorrow, but those who have overcome this clinging are free. So what is it about clinging to the love that can bring sorrow? Well, basically it's because we then expect too much from what we cling to. And of course this is particularly true in our relationships with others, and perhaps even more particularly in sexual relationships, where we can easily see the other person as sort of making us whole in some way, rather than finding that wholeness for ourselves. So there is nobody in the whole world who can make us whole, and who can give us everything that we need and that would be good for us and so on. There is nobody. And that is because, we all have strengths and weaknesses. And when we start clinging to another person, apart from anything else, it's very off-putting, isn't it? I don't know if you've ever had that experience of somebody having expectations of you that you can't possibly meet. However much you love someone, in a way, we have to hold that love lightly. And we partly do that by knowing the truth of reality, by knowing that, impermanence may at any time take them away from us. We never own another person. They might not die. They might leave us. They might decide they've had enough. It might be that we've grown apart, that we have nothing in common anymore. It might be that perhaps children kept you together, and when the children have gone, there's nothing much left of the relationship. And as I've said before, it does take courage to really look at our lives and see what isn't working. And that doesn't mean that we just look for something new and exciting, something novel. No, it definitely doesn't mean that. But we need to ensure that we are an individual, that we are kind of creatively individual. In other words, we have our own life. And, that means stepping out sometimes and doing things on our own, not relying on somebody else to always be with us. So, it's a sad fact that often in older age, when one partner dies, the other partner is the one that is left, is very unused to doing certain things. Maybe they just don't know how to look after themselves. Maybe they don't know how to pay bills or change a light bulb. And that's a very sad situation. In a way, we should all be able to be whole in ourselves, independent in ourselves. And it's an irony, really, but that makes us more able to have relationships when we're more whole in ourselves, when we're not looking for another person to kind of make our lives. I mean, there's that expression, isn't there? My other half. My other half. And although it's said in jest, and although it can have a pleasant aspect to it in that it can be an expression of love, it's also somehow a bit demeaning, because we don't need another half. We want to be whole in ourselves. And that happens by us getting to know ourselves, which I know I say a lot about, but that's it. We're trying through meditation and practicing perhaps practicing the precepts to really penetrate into what we are, not just who we are, but what we are. And I think it can be quite a shock, when we start to meditate and we realise what our mind throws up all the time. There's hardly a moment goes by when we don't have thoughts running through our head. And often the thoughts that arise in our mind are ones that we run away with or push them away if we don't like them. But often, one thought leads to another, and that's never ending. If we allow that to happen without investigating. And we do learn in meditation how to quiet the mind. It doesn't mean that thoughts disappear, but we do learn how to relax enough and enjoy spaciousness enough, which is an internal. I'm not now talking about me time or the fact that we've got time to sit there, but something a bit different to that really, because it's a kind of spaciousness that we can find within ourselves. Our heart is bottomless, our mind is bottomless, and its very nature is, as wide as the universe. But the only way we can discover that is by meditating, by taking up a meditation practice and being really committed to it. So clinging is the cause of great suffering. And that means clinging to anything, whatever we cling to. We can enjoy ourselves without having to always want. So Buddhism is, it's a training actually. It's a training of our minds. And perhaps that word's not even popular nowadays, but we do need to train. We need to train in anything that we want to be good at. And, very often we can find that we're just very undisciplined. We intend to do things, we don't do them. The days slip by, perhaps without enough meaning in our life. And how do we find that meaning? Well, only by awareness, only by not being on that automatic pilot, by really knowing ourselves. So actually there's nothing more attractive than somebody that's whole in themselves, that doesn't look to other people for their pleasure. And of course that doesn't mean that we don't get pleasure from other people. We can do, but the freer we are in ourselves, the more whole we are in ourselves, the greater the chance of really being somebody who people want to be with. Because as I said, there's nothing worse than somebody clinging. So what do I mean by whole in ourselves? Well, partly that is by knowing ourselves. It's partly by not being afraid, by not ricocheting between hope and fear. Because fear can keep us really small and then looking for what can't ultimately either satisfy us or give us the safety that we're looking for. We have to find that safety for ourselves. And we can. And that happens partly by facing fears. Whatever we are afraid of, that we need to go to. Because what is there to fear? What is there to fear, really? If we live honestly and whole in ourselves, we won't be fearful. And that also, of course, as I've said before, means facing the fact that our life has a sell-by date, that we are all going to die. and, enjoy the liberation of knowing that, which can help us to live more fruitfully today, more in the moment, with more awareness, with more mindfulness. Mindful of our body, mindful of our thoughts and our emotions, mindful of other people, mindful of the world and what the world needs. So all that knowing gives us confidence and takes away a lot of the fearfulness that we might have. So I'm going to leave it there today. Bye for now.